This coming New Year's will mark 2 years since my daughter Monique Bao was kidnapped and murdered.
Let's embark on our first case to the Orange County Superior Court in Southern California, where 23-year-old Grace Elizabeth Coleman stands before the Honorable Judge Greg Prickett. In this trial, Coleman has admitted guilt to the charge of double vehicular manslaughter. The car crash occurred at the intersection of Newport Coast Drive and Pelican Hills Road South, where reportedly, Coleman had been leaving a bar with a blood alcohol level that was recorded at 0.22%, nearly 3 times the legal limit. According to witnesses, she entered into her Range Rover where she ran a red light and crashed into a Nissan carrying an entire family with 3 children included. Tragically, the DUI crash resulted in the loss of Henry Eduardo Saldana Mejia and his wife Gabriela Andrade. Their 3 daughters, aged between 1 and 5 years old, were also present during the incident and sustained severe injuries. Thankfully, the girls received prompt medical attention at the hospital for their broken legs, while the eldest also suffered 2 broken arms. The district attorney involved in the case, Jennifer Walker, had this to say about the fatal crash.
Her car landed in a position where she'd have to walk past that victim vehicle to start leaving the scene. And she walked past these crying girls to leave the scene.
According to Coleman's defense attorney Paul Meyer, Ms. Coleman openly accepted responsibility to the judge for this complete tragedy. In this next clip, the family of the victims get a chance to confront Grace Elizabeth Coleman in court, showing her the notes and letters from the children whose lives she changed forever.
My name is Elena. I miss my mom and my dad. I feel sad when the accident happened.
After being almost brought to tears, Judge Greg Prickett, compelled by the family's pain, makes comments towards Coleman before handing down a hefty sentence of 21 years to life in prison.
Sense strongly that they would want you to continue to live your life with joy, to appreciate every day, to raise those precious girls.
In the aftermath of the case, the 3 girls who survived the crash now live with their aunt, while Coleman will reside in the Orange County Jail for at least the next 20 years of her life. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, the next case centers around 29-year-old Elsa Segura, who is on trial for her role in the kidnapping and murder of Monique Bohr, as well as the attempted murder of John Mitchell Momo.
This coming New Year's will mark 2 years since my daughter Monique Bao was kidnapped and murdered.
Segura has pleaded guilty to aiding and abetting her 2 co-conspirators, Cedric Berry and Berry Davis, in a tragic tale of drug-related crime and violence. The events unfolded on December 31, 2019, when Elsa Segura, a former probation officer at Hennepin County, utilized a disposable phone to deceive 28-year-old realtor Monique Bohr into attending a house showing at a residence in Maple Grove. Once Monique Bohr arrived, Cedric Berry and Berry Davis abducted her, forcibly taking her into a U-Haul van. Later that night, they targeted John Mitchell Momo's home, firing shots in an attempt to take his life, before turning their weapons on Monique Bohr. Tragically, Bohr suffered 3 fatal gunshot wounds during this harrowing shooting spree. Authorities discovered that Segura's involvement in this dreadful incident stemmed from a business dispute with John Mitchell Momo over a drug trade gone awry, which eventually led to the heartbreaking death of Monique Bohr. Now the scene sets on Segura in her sentencing, where she is confronted by the mother of Monique Bohr in a show of emotion.
Monique's oldest daughter, Legend, said to me a couple weeks ago, she said that she wants to die. And I said, no, baby, why would you say that? And she said, because I want to see my mommy. And she said, you can bring me flowers. And I knew she was referring to the times that we bring Monique flowers to her grave.
Elsa Segura sits emotionless as she listens on before finally being sentenced to life in prison by Judge Peter K. Hill. Before handing down the sentence, the judge commented this on Segura's role.
You could have stopped this from happening.
After the sentencing, the Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman said the heinous actions by the defendant were recognized by the jury, and she was found guilty for her involvement in the death of Ms. Bohr. In the aftermath of our case, Elsa Segura now spends the rest of her life behind bars at the Hennepin County Jail, where she worked formerly as an officer.
go back in time and go visit Eli, give him one last hug and kiss. One last time of seeing that big toothless smile. One last time of hearing his giggles. One last time of saying goodnight, pumpkin.
In Hennepin Superior Court, located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Julissa Thaler faces a life sentence before the esteemed Judge J. Quam. Thaler's encounter with the law began when she was pulled over in Orono, Minnesota, for driving a vehicle with a shattered rear window and a blown-out tire. An observant neighbor had noticed the suspicious condition of the car and promptly informed the local authorities. Upon inspection, officers made a horrifying discovery. The lifeless body of Thaler's son, Eli Hart, was found in the trunk of the vehicle, lying beside the crowbar that had been used as the murder weapon. Investigators painstakingly assembled evidence, which included a troubling Google search query: how much blood can a 6-year-old lose? During the court proceedings, Thaler remained emotionless, seated alongside her defense team, as her family members delivered victim impact statements.
Eli will forever be missed by so many people that loved him. He will forever and always be in our hearts.
Eli's stepmother and aunt, who had fostered the young boy after he was removed from his mother's care by social services, passionately spoke about Eli, emphasizing that he was more than just a murder victim. He was a cherished individual with a life full of potential. The overwhelming evidence presented during the trial left the Hennepin County jury with little doubt. After less than 2 hours of deliberation, they returned a verdict of guilty on both murder counts, leading to Thaler's conviction. When given a final opportunity to speak, this is what Thaler had to say to the court.
I would like to say something.
Go ahead.
I'm innocent. You all, you're garbage.
In the aftermath of this case, Julissa Thaler was sentenced to life in prison, where she'll reside with the inmates of the Hennepin County Jail. Now, we turn our attention to Buffalo, New York, where LaShawn Lewis stands before the esteemed Judge Susan Egan. Lewis has been found guilty of committing a terrible act, the murder of her own mother, Lateefah Lewis, who was 50 years old at the time of her tragic demise. The incident took place on August 4, 2005, inside her residence on Orange Street, where she was brutally stabbed more than 40 times. Lateefah Lewis was a remarkable woman, being a mother to 4 children and a grandmother to 6. Her life revolved around caring for others as she worked as a nurse's aide in a nursing home. Described as loving, kind-hearted, and exceptionally generous by her family and friends, her loss left a profound impact on their lives. Following her untimely passing, an extensive investigation spanned over 12 years before her daughter, LaShawn Lewis, was finally charged in connection to the crime. The initial trial ended with a hung jury, adding to the emotional toll on the family. Outside the courtroom, during Lewis's arraignment, family members engaged in a deeply emotional confrontation in the hallway. Now, the focus shifts to the present day, as a new jury holds the responsibility of determining LaShawn Lewis's fate. Given a chance to speak, Lewis pleads for her innocence.
She was my best friend. She was my strength. There's no way on earth that I could have taken her life.
Despite her pleas, the jury remained resolute and united in their decision, rendering LaShawn Lewis guilty without any dissent. As a consequence of this verdict, Judge Egan delivered the harshest sentence possible, 25 years to life in prison. Upon hearing her fate, Lewis couldn't contain her emotions and let out a final, defiant war cry, expressing her frustration and anger. In an act of contempt, she spat into the jury box, directed at those who had found her guilty of the crime she was accused of. On this case, Erie County District Attorney John Flynn said, "No matter how many years have passed, my office will continue to aggressively investigate and prosecute all cold case homicides committed in Erie County."
She got her GED, she went and got her job, she made her life the best she could, and she was at a point in her life where she felt that it was time for her to enjoy.
You didn't even know my mother.
In the aftermath of this case, LaShawn Lewis now spends the rest of her life behind bars at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility in New York.
Thanks for watching. We hope that you found this information both informative and engaging. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so that you never miss a new video.
I would like to say something.
Go ahead.
I'm innocent. You all, you're garbage.
Victory.